Wow, what an amazing 2 days, right? Right?
Right.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, Skyline, for having me here. It's a privilege, like always. I'd like to share my story with you, but first, I'd like to ask you a few questions. Now, don't answer these questions out loud, keep them to yourself, because if I don't answer them during the story, then most likely I'll give you the opportunity to answer them at the end. Tom, if I were to ask you what your paradigm is for how I end up in a wheelchair, what would you say? Keisha, if I were to ask you, do you think that this wheelchair has limited me in any way? How would you answer that? So I don't leave anyone out, I'll ask everyone. Do you think that limitations have a negative impact on all of our lives? Well, eventually I will tell you how I ended up in this wheelchair, how it has not limited me, and how it's made my life even better than it was before. So I invite you to take a journey with me in which I will share my character. You'll get to know me as a person. I will explain to you how I found the gift of forgiveness in spite of a limited childhood, limited resources, limited decisions, limited family, and finally a catastrophic injury. The United States of America, this country I've grown to love, respect, protect, and hold near and dear to my heart. It's not the same United States of America that I grew up in. I'll repeat that. It's not the same United States of America that I grew up in. All across this great nation, there are poverty-stricken communities, numbers of them. I don't need to tell you what these communities look like or even who occupies them. However, I will share with you the ones that made Eric Michael Frazier. My life started in 1983. I was born in the lovely spring in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Shortly after, my sister was arrived. From the outside looking in, you would think we were this happy American family, and that was maybe true until my dad, a U.S. Marine, who was supposed to live by the same values I do, honor, courage, and commitment, abandoned us. With nowhere else to go, we went and lived with my grandmother, my mother's mother, which we affectionately refer to as Nana. My mother, at one point, had escaped this same house, same neighborhood, to be with my dad, but found herself right back there with her two kids in the same raggedy house with no running water, no electricity, no heat, and most of the time we used kerosene lamps. My grandmother, she used to sleep on a couch. My mother had her bedroom. My sister and I shared another. I remember used to hear these roars that were coming across from the adjacent bedroom. And raccoons occupied the other bedroom that maybe I could have or my sister could have lived in. They tore a hole down through the raggedy roof that was dripping rain and had a family of their own. I used to sleep on an outside bed because I was terrified that if they could tear through the roof, that it's more than likely they could tear through this thin door and get to my sister and I couldn't allow that. As my sister and I, we used to walk to school over a mile in elementary school. I used to look up at the big window that was over top of the garage at the raccoons waving down at us. I used to think to myself that they were saying, "Have a great day at school, Eric. See you when you get home." For a long time, I was terrified of raccoons, and it took me some time to get over these raccoons. But later on in my life, I found myself even feeding some of them some gummy worms from my hand. Talk about getting over your fears, right? My mother, she continued on with her education and earned her business degree, in which she also met a gentleman named Keith. Keith was an ex-NFL football player, and they began dating, and she became pregnant with my little brother. Keith helped us move out of our raggedy house into what we thought was a better situation. In some aspects it was. this 250 square foot, 2-bedroom duplex had running water. It had heat, it had electricity. We had access to a little bit better food supply. However, a new set of challenges now presented themselves. After walking to school the first few times in middle school, I got approached by these gang members that were much older than me who represented the Bailey Avenue East Side Bloods. Now, they made me an offer that I refused several times, which was join our gang or else. Now, being a natural leader, I knew that this was not something I wanted to be a part of or lead other people into, so I refused several times, in which I quickly found out that it was not going to be an option. After being approached the third time or so and asking me if I wanted to join their gang and threatening me and telling me that they would burn my house down, take advantage of my sister, I still refused. So one day they caught me walking home from school and they jumped me and they beat me with a gun, beat me with a baseball bat, and to this day I still wear a scar on my face. I had no choice but to give in to that demand then, because I was terrified that they would go after my sister or my mother next. I didn't want to see if they would keep their promise. Nevertheless, I found myself in a gang, being used, being taken advantage of, standing out on corners selling drugs, fighting all the time. And you know, with this type of mentality, of course, you're going to have run-ins with the police, in which I never had a negative run-in with the police unless it was something that I did that warranted. After fighting one day, my first encounter with the police, got arrested, got put on probation. However, I did what I was supposed to do to complete this probation and found myself back off. But shortly after, my sister was approached by this guy who wanted to make her basically her baby's mama. This dude was like a lot older than her. And so when I confronted him, we got into a fight. And being a little scrawny dude myself, I had to do what was necessary to protect her and myself. I hit this guy with a brick, and instead of the police coming and arrested him, they came and arrested me. This is when I found myself having to go to court and was put in front of a judge.